Fantastic. And as I get into the presentation, so as I was saying, 50 or so years ago, 100 years ago, even up to 20 years ago, an author used to write a brilliant manuscript either on their typewriter or maybe pen to paper with a quill. I mean, maybe etched in stone, but throughout history, authors would write their brilliant manuscript, then they would send it off to the powers that be in the publishing house. There would be a slush pile, a huge pile of manuscripts that were sitting at the gatekeeper's desk. They would flip it open, reject, 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 reject. And it was very hard for an author, an unknown author, to come in through that gatekeeper. And the gatekeeper very often wasn't even the publisher. They were an acquisition editor who was looking for very specific things like what's trending or what's coming in vogue at the time. And we all know those famous stories about all the manuscripts that were rejected and rejected and rejected by those acquisition editors, only to be picked up down the line by a smaller publisher, or maybe a publisher after many, many rejections. And of course, then the triumph, we hear them as the triumph of all those authors who succeeded despite all those gatekeepers. Well, today, that reality is a little bit different. The game has changed. In 2021, not only do we not need those gatekeepers anymore, not only do we have other options for publishing, but in fact, some of the biggest successes that have come into the market lately have been actually books that did tremendously well as self-published books, proved themselves, got in the door, and then were noticed by the major publishers. So today, the key to getting published isn't any longer having to get the attention of an acquisitions editor to get it approved. Today, it's actually self-publishing that is really making the inroads in having authors be able to gain enough traction to then get published by a traditional publisher or not. And I'm going to give you now some of the pathways towards that and having your choice. In this, you'll see this is an overview of my self-publishing simplified course that I give, where I go into all of the 10 steps to planning and publishing your best-selling book. For today, of course, I can only give you an overview, and I promise, though, if you stay till the end, I can never let people go away empty-handed. I'm going to give you one little goodie, one little quick tip so that you can apply the self-publishing secrets today. And if you're not ready to publish today, that's okay. You have access to this recording, as well as you can take the self-publishing simplified course anytime down the line. So let's get into it. Today, we have primarily four publishing paths. And the four publishing paths, I'm going to give you an overview of the direction and the navigation. So I'm going to chart the whole ocean for you, so that it doesn't matter where you are in the spectrum of where are you a beginner writer, an already published writer, experienced writer, anywhere where you are, you'll find some nuggets within it. So of course, we start with the traditional publishing model. And this is what I was saying about those gatekeepers. An author would send it over to them. They would take it over, and they call them the Big Five. These are the the Big Five New York publishing houses. So Random House, Simon & Schuster. I mean, those waters have there's been a few buyouts in the last little while, especially in 2021. But we call them the New York Big Five. Those are the ones that primarily people wanted to get a foot in the door with them. And those have a lot of imprints as well. So sometimes you'll see things that are a different name and then you'll open the first page and it'll be an imprint of. And then you have specialty houses. There are way too many to name of that, but specialty houses, for instance, my brother who's in high tech, he's in the tech industry, he's published a book under a specialty house that deals only with technology, technical books. You'll have educational specialty houses, all kinds of specialty houses that deal only with that niche. Here's how they are different than what we'll look at afterwards. They are, there's no cost to the author. So this is how you know it's a traditional publisher versus any other publishing model. They do not require the author to pay. If the author pays, it is not a traditional publishing. Traditional publishing, the business model is one where they make money on the book sales. That's how their model is. They're looking to sell books. So they give an advance on royalties to the author. Now, when we hear that in the movies, sometimes we hear, you know, an actor, a character in a movie get really excited and go, I got a $500,000 advance. I got $1 million advance. Okay, let's hold up. Let's not get so excited. I want to clarify this. When they're saying that in the movie, an advance is like a loan. It's an advance on royalties, meaning that the publisher wants to sell this many copies of the book, and your percentage, your royalties on that many copies is expected to be this much. So when they give you an advance, it's as if they're giving you a dent, a little swimming money, I guess you could say, you know, a little wiggle room to be able to continue to write and to market and to take your book to build a platform. In the case that you don't sell as many books as they have advanced to you, you actually owe the publisher that money. Now, again, as I mentioned, they're in the business of book sales. So it's in their best interest to sell as many books as possible. It's in your best interest to sell as many books as possible. And they're looking to create as many book sales as possible. How do they do that? Well, they have their own in-house sales team, their own distribution channels, even those little specialty houses like technology, for instance, they have an email list of people who are really eager and hungry for those technology books. They have their own PR release or media coverage. They have scaled print run or and then POD. So POD means print on demand. Scaled print run means that they're printing that many more books. So it's cheaper for them to print. And once those books go out to the markets, to all their distribution channels, like, you know, Walmart, or even some pharmacies have books, or Barnes and Noble or Indigo, or, you know, any of the other ones. Once all of that scaled print run has been sent off to the book distribution, to those merchandisers, then anything else above that people want to buy, that's print on demand, POD. We're going to see that word come up, that term come up again. The other benefit, the pros to a traditional publishing, is that subsidiary rights, so international rights, licensing deals for merchandise or for movies or for TV shows or anything else that comes with it, well, they have a better chance of getting that, right? They've got those connections. The cons, and here's the big one. The publisher actually owns your book. They retain the rights. They are the owners of it. They choose what happens next, whether you agree or not. There's not really any creative control for you. So low to no creative control for the author. And here's one: the author must market. Remember, we talked about that the traditional publishers give you an advance. Well, they're giving you an advance in order for you to market yourself, do your own. In the old days, the 60s, the 70s, you know, it was expected that the author would buy a whole bunch of books and put them into a van and travel all around the country giving book talks. That was what your advance was for, to allow you to do that. Today, the game has changed, the market has changed, but having to market is still on the author. And so there is a catch with traditional publishers. Usually with traditional publishers, unless you're specialty houses, the author must have an agent, which is sometimes harder to get than actually into the traditional publisher, or a big platform. What's a platform? Well, there's a few different ways we can look at platform, but for now, let's just say your amount of people that you can reach, your celebrity, your affiliation with different organizations. My favorite example of platform building is one of my favorite novels. It's called The Art of Racing in the Rain by Garth Stein. It was made into a movie, though I'm a reader. If you're here, you're probably a reader too. The movie pales in comparison to the book. They missed out an essential element, which I'm sure Garth Stein didn't approve of, but he has no creative control. He doesn't own the book anymore. But the great secret of Garth Stein's success, or The Art of Racing in the Rain, it's a book that's told by the voice of the family dog, and it has concepts within it of cancer and of racing, car racing. So Garth Stein, what he did was he became affiliated with those dog and pony shows, which has a huge platform. I mean, there's a lot of groups and organizations and message forums and activities and weekend workshops and different things that he could attend in order to sell his books. Same thing with car racing. If you're into car racing, you're a huge fan of car racing. There are forums, there are magazines, there are weekend races, there are all kinds of things. So he got himself into all of those events. And of course, cancer, he created a fund that certain percentage of his book sales went to cancer research. So now more people who are involved with cancer research are now going to be part of his platform as well. And the book covers that. So very great use of platform. He didn't necessarily have to build his own platform. He affiliated with concepts within the book that platforms or people with big platforms really wanted to promote him. So that's a great example. So platform is that. It doesn't mean that you have a Facebook presence of, 1 million people. It means that the book that you've written, you can show how you can affiliate with already created platforms. And here's the other catch, as I mentioned before, most advances do not earn out. And if you don't earn it out, you're actually owing. Another thing people don't know about traditional book sales, those distribution channels, if Indigo or Barnes & Noble or whatever bookseller you like to frequent, whatever books they don't buy, the traditional publisher actually has a buyback agreement. It's been in place for 100 years, 50 years, longer than anyone can now change the agreements, but the agreements are there. So if the book doesn't sell, the publisher must buy them back. And then usually they get incinerated or shredded just because, that's just the nature of the business. They have nowhere to keep them. That's the problem with these large scale print runs. And like I said, though, the game has changed. So traditional publishing is a model that existed. Keeping in mind, book sales are the principal goal of traditional publishing are book sales. Book sales, book sales, book sales, on top of everything, book sales. And I'm mentioning that because now we go into the hybrid or assisted publishing model. I wish that people would call this hybrid or assisted self-publishing. And this is my personal pet peeve when someone tells me that they're a publisher and I say, are you a self-publisher? And they say, well, a hybrid. And I said, then you're a hybrid self-publisher. Because in fact, this is a self-publisher and they are a hybrid of different elements. They're assisting you in self-publisher. Here's the difference. The author pays to publish their book. If you're paying to publish your book, you are self-publishing. Now, I don't want to paint it as if hybrid or assisted publishing, I don't want to paint it with a broad stroke and kind of make it as if they're all scammers or snake oil salesmen. Not at all. The 70s or the 80s back then, this would have been called vanity publishing, because the only people going towards this model were people who had more money than time, or more money than really the desire to actually write a book. And so they would have a vanity publishing company come out with their book. And time has evolved since then. Some hybrid or assisted publishing companies are on the up and up. They tell you exactly what it is, and they're not huge investment. However, some are some pretty big investment. And I'll give you, as we go through, a little bit of some things to watch out for. It's a great option, though. The money there's an investment for the author, and the publishing companies pay the author royalties as well. The pros, so you have all your creative control. You choose the cover, you choose what kind of editing, you choose the interior layout, and you choose everything. You also retain your rights, so you can sell it to a movie producer, sell it to any other foreign rights. Then you can invest. You can choose where you want to invest. So if the company has promotion, like if they have their own PR department, their own sales department, their own distribution, or you can say hodgepodge, you can create your own menu, invest and outsource. So you can have some things done by the publisher or have some things done on your own. It's up to you. They do save the author a lot of time and money, because guess what? If you're a brilliant author, be a brilliant author. Let someone else be brilliant at the creativity of cover design, the creativity or the mindset that is interior layout. I know quite a few of my self-published authors come to me after 3 or 4 months of trying to figure out the layout before they just go, I'm throwing my hands up in despair. Some things are just more work and energy than they're worth. And so, a hybrid or assisted self-publishing saves the author a lot of that time and energy. The cons, though, this business model is based on the author investment, not on book sales. So this kind of publisher doesn't actually make money if your book sales, if your book highly succeeds. It's also print on demand only, so limited distribution. So the cost to print it is going to be more than a scaled print run. That cost, though, is on the author. So the more you print, the cheaper the print run will be. And yet again, another con, the author must market. The author must take this to the market. So the catch is this, because it's such a high investment, if you have many books or series of books, or if you want to become a career author, this isn't a sustainable business model. You're probably not going to make more than you've invested in. It is, though, if it's your first time as an author, it's a great way to get your feet wet, to understand what it is that you really want, what it is that you like, what it is that you're saying, that's a part that I'm happy to give that to someone else. Even with editing, everyone knows it takes a different set of eyes to edit your work than to write your work. So you might know that, hey, editing is something I don't want to do. Cover design is something I don't want to do. Interior layout is something I don't want to do. So this gives you a good idea of what it is that you want to do, don't want to do. And if you have another one of the catches, high pressure sales tactics or constant upsells, that just makes the publishing waters really muddy. And that's the biggest complaint that I've heard of authors that come to me wanting to self-publish. They have had an experience before where, they're promised the moon and the stars and everything above, only to have a garage full of 10,000 books or a basement full of 10,000 books that they can't push, that they don't have access to get to people, but it's because their publisher promised them everything under the sun and upsold them on that. So that's a catch. I would be wary of that. And then another publishing model, I put it in here. Before we get to self-publishing as a model, I wanted to talk about do-it-yourself or social publishing. I want to talk about this because every time I give this presentation, the biggest question I get is, what about ebooks? Do I have to put it on Amazon? What if I just put it on my website? Yes, 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 yes. That is 100% necessary and doable. And let's talk about that before we get into self-publishing or the indie self-publishing. So social publishing is self-directed publishing. So blogs, social media, or patron-led. So things like Patreon or Kickstarter, writing blogs or on social media or on some of the paid websites that actually pay you for your articles. Now that could be in a nonfiction expert type of place like medium.com. It could be in a fiction type of thing called things like fan fiction. You could write for Goodreads. There could be things that are paid or unpaid. There have been many, many, many authors who have some great success stories with this model, where I call it blog to book, where so many of your chapters or so many of your themes have been on the publishing domains that collectively you can then go on to write a book with that. And I'll just ask anyone joining, welcome, and we're just going over DIY and social publishing. And I'll ask everyone who's joining to please mute yourself so we can, and I'll be taking questions and answers at the end. So low income to no income for the author, and low investment for the author. So, you're putting in time and energy. You're not necessarily putting in a lot of money, but you are getting an income. I want to mention something about this too. I have had many, many, many clients use this model to publish work on their own websites and Kickstarter campaigns or Patreon campaigns. Things like journals, daily planners, quote books, books that have a motivational feel, but not necessarily have a large word count. So maybe they're things that are given writing prompts or something like that. This market has had huge success, and not necessarily just ebooks, actual printed books, but printed books that are found through a Kickstarter campaign, a Patreon campaign, or people's personal websites. It is one of those unknowns in the field of publishing because people don't know really where to put that. Is it a published book? It's not necessarily something you would find in Barnes & Noble or Indigo or on Amazon, but there are people who are having great success with this and a lot of revenue. It also helps build the author platform, and it has the potential for serialization. We know that in fan fiction or in certain adult fiction or thrillers or anime, that kind of like the Japanese manga, there's quite a lot of websites right now that are coming out with let's say a video element or an element of the writing accompanied with some sort of an animation, and a really simple animation. So for instance, poets that pair their poems with gacha characters, gacha life, which is like a kid's streaming thing, or poets that are having great success on TikTok, different things like that. So this is where we start getting really outside the box. The game has changed. And traditional publishers are scouring, they're raking the market in to try to find these success stories, these really innovative and creative stories. And I have there establishes IP. This is a really big one. Establishing your IP. Intellectual property is the name of the game today. You want to get your stuff out there, because as soon as it's out there under one of your umbrellas, it is your IP. If you're just writing it into your computer or on a typewriter and putting it in a drawer in your desk, someone else can come out with the exact same idea 2 months from now, 3 years from now, and no one will ever know that this was your intellectual property today. So writing for your blogs, your social media, creating things on those websites like Goodreads or Medium.com, fanfiction, all of those really builds a lot of traction. The cons, of course, because it's a very saturated market, it is difficult to get on mainstream media. So TV, radio attention, not going to get that much just because until it's found, the media doesn't want to give it the attention. However, one episode on Ellen is all you need to become a huge success with it. A great story, for example, with this one is the top 5 regrets of the dying. Was a book by an Australian woman named Bronnie Ware. She was a hospice worker, a nurse who would take care of the elderly. She put it in her title that of the dying, and essentially that's what it is. She was taking care of people as they were in their last stages of life. And as she was bathing them or changing their bed sheets or, attending to them, they would talk to her and tell her about their regrets in life and give her the advice. And slowly but surely, she started writing onto her blog and having a lot of attention towards her blog, which encouraged her to write her own self-published book. Maria Shriver picked up the book. Somehow it came to her as she was going through a time of grief and a time where she was releasing and letting go of someone in her life who was aging and dying. And this book came across Maria Shriver's awareness. Maria Shriver tweeted it. And in that one tweet, Bronnie Ware's book became an international bestseller. So it just goes to show the power of social publishing, the power of a single tweet to make the difference. That being said, it is difficult to get into retail stores. Bronnie Ware's book was not in retail stores prior to that tweet. After the tweet, she was everywhere. I believe she even went to New York Times bestseller. Again, though, author must market. Are you starting to see a trend? Bronnie Ware was writing everywhere these concepts within this book. And then the catch for this is the author invests time, energy, resources to build the platform. Niche may become saturated. You don't necessarily have control or exactly know what will be the next trending thing, what will be the next tweet from Maria Shriver, or what will be found on TikTok by Ellen, or or suddenly take off like viral wildfire. It's anyone's guess. And so that leaves us with obviously the last category, and it's actually what we came for, is the independent or indie self-publishing. So who they are, it is the author acting as the publisher. It's where you as the author are now putting on the author hat and the publisher hat. You also, of course, are going to take on your outsourced team and services. Like I was saying before, no man is an island, no woman is an island. We need our community, we need people around us. I, for one, know, I'm not so ego driven to think that I'm the best at everything. I leave the best at other things to the best at other things, to the people who are experts at that. That being said, if you want to have a no cost to the author, You can definitely do your own cover design. You can use things like Canva. Even when you go on to Amazon, they actually will give you a cover if you'd like one for free. I don't recommend it. It's not the greatest cover, and it looks like every other Amazon cover that Amazon gives. The pro to this, though, is all the income goes to the author. The author, you have all creative control, all monetary control. You set the price, you earn on sales. The POD, print on demand, it's affordable to print. You can order as many copies as you want or as few copies as you want. Of course, the more copies you print, the cheaper per copy it is, but you can print as little as 50, even as little as 5. It's completely up to you. The outsourced services can be specified to the author's needs. So, I mean, if you know someone who's great at cover design, you go with that cover designer, and someone who's great at editing, you go with that editor. You have full creative control and you retain all your rights. The cons, though, lengthy learning curve. So how do you know who the best at editing is and who the best at cover design, or what parts of it you're willing to give up? You may not know who to hire. It's difficult to get media attention, and the author must market yet again. So the marketing, promotion, and platform building is a long-term investment. This isn't something that you come up with overnight. That being said, I could name 50 success stories of fiction authors, nonfiction authors. Over and over, I can name again and again people who have overnight success. And I do overnight success because we all know it takes 10 years to become an overnight success. What you're doing in your private time, you're praised for in public. And we can name lots of fiction books that we know about. I actually want to name today, I want to pay homage. I always love paying homage to a different author every time I give this example. Today's author will be the author of *Sapiens*, Yuval Noah Harari, who actually his partner, his husband, he had a self-published book that wasn't doing well. His husband, Harari's husband, sent it off to a independent agent, a self-publishing expert, and had them take a look at it, this self-published book. The original book title, I think, was called something along the lines of From Ape to Man, A History of Mankind. They changed the title to *Sapiens*, A History of Humankind. They changed the front cover. They edited a little bit of the very research and technical aspects of the book, and then they republished it as a self-published book. It became a New York Times bestseller. I think *Sapiens* sat on the New York Times bestseller list for at least 30-something weeks, and it still is a bestseller today. It's had tremendous success, and that is another example of self-publishing success. So he was picked up by a traditional publisher because of the success of his self-publishing. And I know that that's a pretty philosophical and heady example. So I'll also say the author of 50 Shades of Grey also was a success story in the same way. So we can see different ends of the spectrum, from the very philosophical, literary type to the very non-literary, let's call it sort of fan-based fiction. But both of them had huge success as self-published in order to gain the traction and then go on to have all sorts of success afterwards. Did you notice something in all 4 of these publishing paths? Author must market in every single one of them. So if there's one thing we can learn, traditional self-publishing that's assisted or DIY or independent, the author must market. So now I know I said that I would give you one little nugget before you leave. And here's the thing. what I teach in my whole workshop, the Self-Publishing Simplified workshop, is the full 10 steps. Now, in this room, I don't know how many of you, where you are in your publishing path, but let's just say the number one biggest distributor of books today is Amazon. So while there are many steps to becoming a best-selling author, let's look at Amazon, because prior to the lockdown of 2020, the statistics were that Amazon was selling 60 to 70% of all book sales in the world. We don't have the most recent statistics. I have no doubt that that number has risen even more, since people are less inclined to go to the bookshop, less inclined to buy things that in person. And since we're doing a lot of our buying online, Amazon's selling is probably by far more than that. So how do you become an Amazon best-selling author? Some people will say that there's an algorithm, and there really is. Amazon, not only is it a book seller and a publisher, meaning they own the publishing, they actually print the books, they own the printing houses, the actual places where the books get printed. So publishers, they're also the merchandisers, they're the delivery, they're one-stop shopping, as well as Amazon is also a search engine, just like Google, just like YouTube. So Amazon, when you go onto Amazon, what I see when I go onto Amazon and search something is different than what you see when you go onto Amazon and search something. That's based on my search history versus your search history. Each person in the world and in this room is going to have a different top categories that happen when they go to Amazon to search something up. But there is a little bit of a hack or a little tip that self-publishers aren't telling anyone. And it is a little bit of an algorithm hack. So how do we get all the eyes on us when we publish on Amazon? And I told you that I would give you a small little tip, and here it is. And so as I said, in my course for Self-Publishing Simplified, I go through each and every one of the things that are very necessary, because I am not in any way an advocate of just putting something on Amazon just to become a bestseller. There are steps to actually becoming properly, to actually have a book people want to read, not just, trying to hack the Amazon system. But to become a bestseller, there is one tip that I can give you to walk away with. This is your ensuring that you walk away with that dessert at the end of the presentation. And that is this: keyword magic. When you submit your book for publishing, you'll be asked to fill out a field called keywords. You're given a choice of 7 Amazon keywords to describe your book, essentially telling Amazon that your book should rank in that particular term. Remember that what you see on Amazon and what I see on Amazon are 2 different things, but you want your book to get under as many eyes as possible. Once you get a list of Amazon search terms with high search volumes, you can start inserting them at appropriate sections. And this is where people do this to become bestsellers. The most important places to include those keywords are in your book's title, your subtitle, and your category sections. Here's the thing about Amazon categories. Amazon does not show you every category that you can become a part of. They show you only a maximum of 10 categories for you to choose. There are secret Amazon categories. When you insert the keywords that are specific to the category sections, like magic, keyword magic, it opens up categories that hadn't been available to you before. So when people say they are number 1 in certain categories, it's because they use this keyword magic. So make sure they're optimized for Amazon algorithm, but also easily understood by a human reader. That goes without saying. I know that we are all people of integrity, though I have seen some books that say things like, I mean, they're just a series of keywords and they make no sense to the human reader. But I know that you all wouldn't do that. So once you've optimized your books with the relevant Amazon keywords, sit back and watch as you get more free organic visits to your Amazon Authors Central page than you ever had before. That's eyes on your books that wouldn't have been there before. So how do you do this? Your pro tip, go to Amazon and use your search box suggestion function. When you go to Amazon, actually begin writing something and it will suggest, the search box will suggest things in that function. Here's another pro tip. Find the books that you are the most similar to. Look up their categories. Whatever categories they are in under the Amazon best-selling rank, the ABSR, that means that they have been using those keywords to get them in that category. And you follow the same, and you will be ranked with that same book that you are trying to find the same market for. And that is self-publishing simplified. As I mentioned, if you go to maravrichter.com SPS, the publishing chart that the 4 publishing paths chart that I was showing you earlier, you can have that free of charge as a gift for attending. And then as you're in the email, then I'll be able to send you this recording in the future. And with that, I will sign off and stop the recording. And I will also be able to take questions. If you're just joining me for the recording, thank you so much for listening and thank you so much for attending. For people who are live, I'll be able to take some questions and answers in the next few moments. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great day and write on.